Welcome, everyone. We are here with Kyle Chalupczynski from Penn State Behrend, and he is a professor at the business school and also a TLT faculty fellow. This is his second time visiting our group, and he has much to share with us with what he's doing with Claude Code. Thank you so much, Kyle, for visiting the group, and over to you.
Thank you, Cassandra, and thank you again for having me. Like you said, it feels like a lifetime since I was last here, and even since I initially reached out to you to set this up. Feels like a long time since then, and I'll actually talk about that a little bit. But as I'm getting my screen shared and shuffled around here, hopefully everybody can see that. Again, my name is Kyle Chalupczynski. I teach MIS and increasingly so AI here at Penn State Behrend. Today I'm going to be talking about an issue that is probably plaguing anybody in here that's maybe created anywhere from, a minimum of like 5 to 10 chatbots that you have in regular use. And that's the fact that managing those, maintaining those, making changes anytime a new model is released, or, you want to make a pedagogical change to those chatbots, it can become a little bit of a hassle. But to take a step back real quick. So last time Cassandra had me, I talked about my PALS framework. PALS stands for, as you can see, Personalized AI Learning Simulations. I'd love to give a quick tour of this, but ultimately not going to be the focus for today. I am going to just give you a tiny, just peek around here. So again, about a year ago, this was the hub that I had created for all of the chatbot-based assignments that students were doing in my Intro to MIS course. And again, there's a lot in here that we don't have time to go through, but the kind of high-level bird's eye view of this was, or is still, that students start out the semester with this company launchpad assignment, and this is currently still built on top of ChatGPT. I have plans over the summer to get this off of there and actually host this locally, maybe another session, Cassandra. But this takes you to the first chatbot of the semester. So they come into this company launchpad, they have a conversation. You can just see, what does this chatbot do? It's going to ask them a series of 6 or 7 questions, helping them zero in on what company or what industry they would like to create a company in. Company is going to be the foundation for all of the assignments throughout the semester. So at the end of this conversation, this chatbot is going to spit out a company profile for that student. That company profile becomes the starting block for every subsequent assignment. So the next week, students come down, they click on this first chatbot, and they provide it with their company profile. And that didn't copy over. Okay, so I drag my company profile over here and just send that. They don't have to say anything. Chatbot's already aware of what the assignment, what they're going to be guiding the student through, but it's going to use that company profile to tailor whatever that assignment, whatever decisions the student that has to make for that assignment, tailors it to their company, and it walks them through it in a Socratic approach. It doesn't give them any answers. If they have any questions, and they're encouraged to ask questions, they're encouraged to push back. They're encouraged to go down rabbit holes with this and explore as much as they would like. So that's the chatbot side. Again, there's, as you can see here, 5 steps to this conversation. Students go through, have the conversation. At the end of the conversation, the chatbot provides them with something called a documentation guide. That is a Word document template that helps the students capture the decisions that they made throughout the conversation. So they can't just, in theory, go on autopilot, have the conversation and be done with it. They actually have to kind of synthesize that information into a format that they would be comfortable presenting to their supervisor or their CEO or whoever it may be in their situation. Okay, so that's the high level overview. And again, there are some other things in there. It's example conversations or examples of how I want students to engage, because after a couple of semesters of stressing to them, engage, 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 surprised that wasn't really landing. So, giving them explicit examples, giving them examples of prompts or questions that they could use, really helping to guide them there. So as I kind of just touched on, there's a number of artifacts that kind of support this whole framework here. There's the, as I mentioned, the custom instructions for each of the chatbots. There is the corresponding documentation guide for each of the chatbots. As I was just kind of saying, each chatbot or each assignment has a checklist, so students can see level from the beginning, how they can kind of expect that conversation to unfold. They also complete a single PowerPoint template at the end of each assignment so that at the end of the semester, they can combine all of those together and they have the whole story of their company's evolution throughout the semester. And again, there's some rubrics in there, some other things, example conversations. So what I'm getting at here is a lot of times there's a ripple effect, right? Changing the custom instructions might need, I have to change the conversation guides. I have to change the engagement tips. I certainly might have to change, the documentation guides. And aside from that, even if let's say that there's maybe a pedagogical change, I notice that the chatbots are maybe too eager to offer too much help, and I want to put in some additional guidelines in the custom or in the system prompts for that. I have to make those changes across, in this case, in this class, 13 different chatbots. If we're looking at all of my academic chatbots, 30, 35 different chatbots that I have to update. And so I actually had this slide from the last time that Cassandra had me. And one of the things that I warned against was that, as you can imagine, you can burn out from this, right? It's a hassle to keep up with all of that. Again, a tweak to one chatbot typically means other similar tweaks to subsequent chatbots. And we're looking at a lot of chatbots here, right? So when last semester ended, and I had a bunch of great feedback. I had some really good students that were not shy about giving feedback about the whole PALS framework, which is exactly what I want throughout the semester. Had all this great feedback from them, but I had mixed emotions about implementing that feedback, right? Because this was going to suck up my entire winter break, right? Um, and I'm thinking, well, can't I just wait till summer like a normal person? But I'd been wanting to experiment with Claude Code. And I figured this would be a good time because if it failed, no harm, no foul. I'd wait until summer. And if it lived up to all the hype, this could, in theory, save me a whole bunch of time, right? So that kind of started my journey. Now, I already had a Claude project set up around the whole PALS framework that I had used to for months and months and months of building and ideating and brainstorming and then saving all of our decisions as artifacts there. And actually, I'll pull that up so you can see that. If you're not using projects, whether it's in Claude or ChatGPT, highly recommend that for keeping everything in one place. I know, again, that's not the point of this today, but just so anytime I want to do something with this project, in this case, hey, I want to look at a better or more efficient way to manage all of these artifacts. I don't have to explain to AI what PALS is and how it works. I already have all those decisions here in that project, right? And all of the artifacts. So as you can see, I don't have to, again, no contacts. I'm trying to figure out the best workflow for making mass edits to my custom instructions. What are my options here? So I did have in mind, I wasn't going into this blind, as I mentioned, I had in mind that I wanted to use Claude Code, right? But I didn't necessarily want to influence Claude one way or another yet. There might have been a better way that I wasn't even aware of. So I left it open-ended to start out here. We're not going to walk through the entire conversation because I know that could put everybody to sleep. But Claude gave me some ideas and also asked some questions. After I answered those questions, I'm ready to tell Claude what I had in mind, which actually ended up aligning with one of its suggestions, right? And I expand on my understanding a little bit here. So all I'm doing here is in this first point here, I acknowledged one of the paths that Claude had suggested, but told it what I didn't like about it, right? This is something I always stress to my students. Don't force AI to be a mind reader, but that doesn't end at just telling it why you want to do something. Also tell it what you don't like or why you don't like something, right? This second point here, this was suggested before I actually knew how to connect Claude Code to GitHub, or before I even actually had a GitHub. So I wasn't really feeling this option. I was still very much intimidated by GitHub. I don't know if anybody's in that same boat, but for whatever reason, it feels intimidating. Number three was where I was leaning the whole time, right? So I had seen via various tweets that it was essentially possible to set Claude Code loose on your computer, And I wanted to see what all of that was about, right? So I said, hey, this is the direction I'm leaning. Let me know what you think. Now, again, details not super important because the details of this approach are going to vary from project to project, but Claude did push back a little bit. Um, but ultimately, it wasn't going to. It had some another suggestion. Hey, we could try this, and that suggestion wasn't going to save me much time. And again, this is one of the things that I stress to students uh, when I warn them about letting AI make all the decisions. Right? Had I just gone, hey, yeah, okay, no problem, that sounds good, you know best. It would have taken me down that path. I would have gone through. I would have ended up not saving myself much time, and then I would have probably had a bad taste in my mouth for Claude Code and not want to go back to it for another month. Right? Um, so again, I told it why I didn't agree with that. I asked it to clear up my understanding on what I could do with Claude Code because I was brand new to it at this point. Um, and this is just Claude answering those questions. It's worth noting that I do have custom instructions, or actually now it's a skill enabled to make sure that Claude uses the internet to check itself when it's relevant, especially with stuff like this because it's changing all of the time. Um, and the knowledge cutoff, I can't remember now what Claude's knowledge cutoff, but I know it's at least sometime last year. So again, just making sure that we're pulling in, current best practices, not just what Claude's understanding was when it was trained. Now I also have a skill in place or custom instructions that has Claude ask me several questions and tell me its assumptions to those or its presumed answers to those questions before we make any major decisions. So again, this is just as much about pumping the brakes, making sure that AI isn't making any assumptions on my behalf, but I'm also forcing AI to think through some of the complexities that it otherwise isn't necessarily going to if we just jump in and say, yeah, let's do it. Let's create this, right? So we have a little bit of a back and forth. This is Claude interviewing me here. You can think of it as an interview process. Hey, let me make sure that, this is Claude saying, let me make sure that I understand what you want to do here, right? And you can see most of the time, I'll end up agreeing with Claude. So it's that key part is having it tell me its presumed answers. That saves a whole bunch of time. Sometimes it suggests better ideas as well. You can see there's a little bit of redirecting or a little bit of additional context here. And then I'm asking it, all right, before you do that, or before you go ahead and create the document that we're going to pass off to Claude Code, I want you to suggest a folder structure because I had everything just scattered all about at this point. Some stuff was on Google Drive, some stuff wasn't saved anywhere except on the website, some stuff I had in Word documents. So I had to figure out a way to get all of this organized, right? So once Claude identified that folder structure for me, it asked me a few more questions, a few more follow-ups. Again, the details not necessarily important there, but again, emphasizing that this was just the interview, the planning phase of things, right? This was making sure that I didn't just aimlessly jump into Claude Code in my first session, and again, get mad when it didn't turn out as well as I hoped. So what is important here is this last part, right? So after Claude and I are on the same page, I say, okay, with that, please create a markdown artifact that I can pass to Claude Code, telling it these two things. So we had identified the folder structure. I wasn't going to go in and manually create each of those folders because that would have taken minutes probably, but I'm going to have Claude Code do that, right? So we want Claude Code to create all of those folders so that we can organize everything, and having Claude create a README document. Now, this is one of the challenges here because when I initially reached out to Casandra and I said, hey, we said I was going to present on this. I wanted to put this presentation together while everything was kind of still fresh in my head and before I went down, because Cassandra, you even said something along the lines of who knows what you'll be working on by March. So I wanted to kind of capture that state of mind that I was in. But that said, there are some things, that I would have probably done differently, lessons learned along the way. I've done my best to include those. This is one such example here. So I did have it create a README file. That was going to be what I pointed Claude Code to initially to have it understand what we were trying to do here. Best practices also dictate you should also have a Claude MD file in every project. And then that's going to provide Claude again with your Claude Code with a whole bunch of contextual information that's going to be relevant to make sure that each time you do something new with Claude Code, it has kind of that necessary context to make sure that it doesn't, for example, delete your production database or whatever, delete a page just because you asked it to implement a new page or something like that. So that's where Claude's code's custom instructions or rules live for an analogy there. So I asked for that document, and with that, I had the instructions that I needed to pass off to Claude Code. So I passed that information off. That's a simple copy and paste, and I'll walk through this if time allows to show you how simple that is. So around this same time, and this was one of the reasons that I had kind of decided to check it out, was Claude Code was made available through the desktop app. So I didn't have to use the terminal. Again, if I was intimidated by GitHub, I was definitely intimidated by the idea of using a terminal and just the white on black text and everything, just not very user friendly, right? So Claude Code was available through the desktop app, super simple to just switch it from chat mode to code. I had already become accustomed to using the Claude desktop app because that was my way of saving me from hunting for that one specific tab that had that one specific Claude project on it amid a sea of thousands of windows and tabs. So switch it over into code mode. So I click that, I see this, and I think, uh-oh, am I in over my head? What do I do now, right? But I'm not ready to give up that easy. So I started clicking around a little bit. Now, by default, this is set up to work directly on your computer. So that's what this local tells us over here. Now, as I said, I'm going to have Claude Code create the folder structure that I had Claude recommend, but I also need to give it first a folder to actually create those folders in. So I have to give it somewhere to actually do its work in the first place, right? So that was the big manual step here. Not really big, but still kind of the biggest time consumer was not just creating the folder on my desktop, but ultimately dumping in those key artifacts that I had as well. Over break, I started playing around or started trying to use Claude for my home automation, and I didn't get to finish, so my lights may occasionally go off there. I apologize. So anyways, had it create that folder. I put the key artifacts in there. Ended up with something like this, right? So to start out, each chapter had a folder. Each of these folders just contained those two main artifacts, the custom instructions and the documentation guides for each chapter. Some of the other stuff, again, I had strewn about, so it wasn't going to fit cleanly into this. When that was the case, I just provided that additional context directly in the chat to either Claude Code or Claude, depending on who I was working with here. But getting everything organized, getting everything in one place where Claude Code could see it all, that was really, the big step here. So, as you can see, December 11th was a productive day for me. Over the course of one afternoon and about 10 conversations with Claude Code, not only did I have brand new artifacts across all of these categories, but again, it was completely conversational. So no coding involved, no even talking about coding involved, even though Claude Code used code to make all of these changes extremely quickly. Now, the unfortunate part with this is I can see these chats in my history, but something happened where I can't actually access the chats. But again, I wanted to open one up just to kind of show you how conversational it was. It would be something along the lines of, hey, I had multiple students tell me, and this was a real real use case that we did. Had multiple students tell me that the documentation guides that they complete after the conversations were way too repetitive with the conversation. So they found themselves essentially just copying and pasting from the chat to the documentation guide, right? Which no synthesis involved there. That's not what I want. So that was one thing that I wanted to address. I said, Claude, here's the situation, or Claude Code, here's the situation. Here's the feedback that I got from students. Go ahead and take a look at all of the documentation guides, all of the custom instructions across all of the chapters, and see why that might be. Help me understand why, why is it too much of a one-to-one here for the students? And then we would talk through it, right? It wasn't necessarily that Claude would come back or Claude Code would come back with the answer right away, but maybe 3, 4, 5 back and forth until we would agree and say, okay, that's the problem. This is how we need to address it. And that's when the real magic started to happen here. So The heavy list should be in quotes there because not heavy for me, at least not anymore. But again, this would have been a massive list for me. Up to this point, this is exactly what I would have done. I would have asked Claude, hey, what changes do we need to make? And then I would have had to go through, 26 different documents manually making those changes. Now it's one sentence here, right? So go ahead, Claude, please make the changes that we discussed across all of the relevant files. And ultimately, I could have cut it off there. I didn't know how to use Claude Code yet, so I didn't realize that it is automatically going to provide a summary of what it's done. So I didn't actually have to explicitly ask for that. Now, again, not dissimilar from my previous approach prior to Claude Code. I would just have talked through it with Claude in the web, had it create those new versions, and then manually update them. So to watch Claude be able to make these changes in a matter of minutes, this took, I believe, around 7 to 8 minutes compared to the probably 3-4 days of working on it off and on that this was going to be taking. This is literally the moment that I emailed Casandra and right then and there, and I said, hey, have you tried out Claude Code yet? You need to try this out now. And she said, hey, come talk about it. So I said, sure. So I'd already been bitten by the Claude Code bug at this point, and it doesn't take long. You see it do one amazing thing, and it's like, okay, what else can it do, right? And now Claude Code had all of the access and the necessary context that it needed, all in one place. It's all in that folder now, right? So I had done a little bit of reading up on connecting Claude Code to GitHub, and I decided, okay, I just saved a whole bunch of time. Now I can take this next step. Now I have some time to experiment, right? I saved so much time by making the changes that would have taken probably, again, maybe a week and probably burnt me out. And now I can actually focus on the fun stuff, right? So that's what I started to do. Now, before I had decided to test out the GitHub waters, I had started building this a little bit locally with Claude Code. Again, this was mainly because I didn't really know what I was doing, still a little bit scared of GitHub. But the bottleneck that I was running into here was that anytime I needed to let my other Claude, the Claude that had all of the PALS context, the initial Claude that I started this effort with, anytime I needed it to be brought up to speed on anything that I had done with Claude Code, I would have to manually update or provide some type of context or give it access or add those files to its project files to give it that new updated picture of what we had done. So by moving it to GitHub, I aimed to kind of fix that issue that I was running into and make sure that both Claude Code and Claude could see the same thing here. So I asked this, hey, we need to copy this local project over to GitHub. Did I know if this was going to work? Absolutely not. This was a shot in the dark here, as was a lot of this stuff along the way here. And in fact, I think I did run into one issue with this. I had forgotten to give Claude Code access to that GitHub. So there is one small setup step, but again, that it was something that Claude just said, hey, no big deal, click this, go here, click this, and now I'll have access to it. So it was, maybe a 30-second turnaround on that. So Claude Code moved the project from my laptop to GitHub. Now I needed to point Claude at that same repository, which was as simple as, and let me just pull up an example of that real quick. So in the knowledge section, it's loading. So again, maybe a 3 or 4 process or step setup process for this, but something that Claude or AI or Perplexity or ChatGPT can easily walk you through. And once you have Claude set up, or give Claude essentially the permissions to access your GitHub account, you'll see this, and you can click and select from any of your projects that are on GitHub and add those files. And again, with that, now we have Claude Code and Claude both looking at the same documents at the same time. No shuffling files back and forth or having to upload or anything. And we can really just kind of focus on getting to work here. So I do my planning over here with Claude in the web version. I do my coding with Claude Code in the desktop app. I do that just because it makes it easy to have two instances of essentially of Claude going rather than having multiple tabs on my computer. Um, Now, when I say that I'm doing planning with Claude over here on the left side, um, you can see here that I started out, and I know it's too small to read, but I started out by providing it with a screenshot. So this is right after I had Claude Code clone that local work that we had done and put it on the repository. I opened it up from GitHub. I looked at the screen and I was like, oh, that sucks. It was boring. It was flat. It wasn't engaging. It wasn't something that students were going to want to use, right? So took a screenshot of that, provided it to Claude and told it exactly that. Here's what I don't like about it. Students aren't going to want to use this. Uh, let's do some mock-ups, right? So we go back and forth, talk about, hey, what do you want it to look like? And then Claude's going to create some mock-ups for me. So this was an interactive artifact that it created. I could toggle in between each of these and see what each recommendation looked like. I'll say I didn't expect, to love any of these right off of the bat. This is just a first round. Don't expect to strike gold on the first round unless you provide really, really, really good context up front, which I didn't do here. But I tell it what I like. I tell it what I don't like. And then we go back and forth for a while until I'm satisfied. So that same pattern that you saw from before, right? So once we get to something that I like, I ask it to go ahead and create a prompt that I can give to Claude Code to implement those changes. Now, since we're no longer working on that local copy that exists on my laptop, this one is live on GitHub, right? I've got to change my Claude connection real quick, but you can see here, this is just a fraction of the prompt that that Claude created for me to give to Claude. Things that I would have never thought to tell Claude, or, color codes that it would have taken forever for me to look up or recommend. Claude already took care of that from the conversation that we had. So like I said, I'm going to need to change my Claude connection. So I showed you that the default for this is to be set up to work locally on your computer. But if you select cloud from that drop down, this is another point where there's maybe a 2 or 3 step process to set up your Claude Cloud, which is essentially just naming it. I named mine Claude Cloud, which was obviously a bad idea because I can't say it. But you create your Claude Cloud. That's where Claude Code does all of its work in the cloud. It creates copies of your repo and branches and pull requests and all of those sorts of things. Which again, 2 months ago, I had no idea what those things were. But about 5 to 10 minutes, maybe, if that, and we've got Claude Code connected to that repository. I've got the prompt that Claude created for me. I provide that directly in the chat here. And in about 5 to 10 minutes, those enhancements that I wanted around the UI that make it more fun and interactive have been created and merged with my code here. And then it's wash, rinse, repeat. So I give Claude a screenshot of the area that we're addressing. I ask it for options. We iron out all of the wrinkles, and then I have it create that Claude Code prompt. I know that this is far too small for anybody to read over here on the left, but this is about half of the conversations that I had with Claude. So this ended up being about a 4-day effort, all said and done, to completely revamp that old PALS platform. And again, not 4 days working, straight through, working on it on and off, throughout the day. Admittedly, a lot at night as well, but couldn't be happier with the results. So again, as a reminder, this was the initial version. And again, when I initially created this, super happy with this, but this was all a manual effort through Google Sites, a little bit of a pain in the butt to maintain. Much happier with the current version of the PALS hub. So if we pull that up real quick, you can see, let me close this to maybe keep things moving here. And again, Cassandra, I did have all of these preloaded, and then my computer insisted that I needed to do a reboot right before this. So again, I got to focus on all the fun stuff, right? Because the maintenance of the chatbots was already taken care of here. And again, this was ultimately in a time frame that probably would have taken me just as much time to make those manual changes across, however many different chatbots that I needed to do. So there's gamification elements, students earn badges. My favorite thing of all time, even though it's super small, was that I had it. So as you remember, the company Launchpad, that's their, where their business takes off. So this is the building emoji turned on its side, turned into a rocket. And my favorite part is that this, and I know this isn't the point here, but the flames get more and more intense as they get further along in the chapter there. So it starts like sputtering and shooting out like little sparks and stuff. But keeps track of that. There's all sorts of stuff on the administrative side that I can't show right now just because there is live student information in there. There's customization options for students. There is, let me see if this one's going to load quickly enough. Probably not a surprise. This was an opportunity to work AI into the platform. So kind of one of the holy grails ever since the AI era started was immediate feedback for students, right? I don't want them to have to just blindly submit and cross their fingers. I mean, I give them the tools, I give them the rubrics, but ultimately, they're not getting any feedback until it's too late to make any changes, right? So created this documentor. This is nice and seamless where when students go to upload their documentation guide, this gives them the option, so they don't have to do it, but it gives them the option to run it through this documentor. The documentor is going to pull in the rubric for the assignment that they're submitting. It's going to pass that out to AI through a call to Together AI. I think this one is running on one of the Llama models, one of Meta's models, or maybe it's Maverick. Either way, it'll give them section by section feedback of, hey, this section looks good, or here's where you might want to make some changes. So again, they can do all of that before they submit it. And this is something that I've actually, implemented on the fly in the middle of the semester. As it was something that I'd been wanting to get to, was able to, again, kind of shift the responsibility so AI could take care of a lot of the mundane work, and I could start looking at things like this. There's also a feature. Oh, so this is another fun one. I had a student reach out looking to take the course as an honors option at the beginning of the semester, and we're thinking about, oh, should I write a report on AI or whatever? And I'm like, no, I don't want you writing a report. Anybody can write a report, these days. So let's create something, right? So this is going to be, so that documenter chatbot that I mentioned, and it's less of a chatbot, more of just an AI, sanity check. This is going to be more of a chatbot. So the student's actually helping me build all of these artifacts that are going to make up this kind of insight chatbot that is going to be designed to help answer students' questions, if I'm not around or if they don't feel like reaching out to me or whatever the case may be. So taken care of. Again, he's currently enrolled in the class, so he's looking at, okay, what's not clear to me, where could additional instruction be useful, and he's thinking about those sorts of things, collaborating with some of his classmates a little bit to see, and hopefully we're hoping to get this one implemented as well before the semester's over, so so that students can kind of start using it, can get some feedback. It's designed to anonymously capture the types of questions that are being asked, so I can see where students are getting stuck or where they have questions, and adjust my approach in future semesters. And then this one was also a recent addition, but I figured the platform itself was a learning opportunity, right? So we're starting to bake in AI features. Let's have some high level, hey, how does this work? So students, if they're curious, and I'm huge on trying to make students be curious. So if they're curious when they use Documenter and they're wondering, well, what's actually happening here? They'll see a little light bulb that shows up, and they can click on that. It'll show a little tooltip that explains exactly what's happening, how it's being passed via Mammoth.js with this prompt and all of that jazz that's going on, behind the scenes. Nothing super detailed, but we have that for how the Documenter works, how the chatbots themselves are built, how feedback is generated. That's a really big one. So I always, actually multiple times throughout the semester, remind students that I do not use AI to grade, but I do use AI to give them feedback, because AI can give much better feedback than I can. But that can sometimes create the appearance or the assumption in students that, well, he must be using it for grading if he's using it for the feedback, right? So that's all kind of spelled out here, how I delegate that process, and how that is handled there. Again, just for in the interest of transparency to students. I still mention it to them in class, but but it's there now as well. And there's some other things in there. Again, I did a whole lot of revamping with Claude because, once I saw how easy it was like, oh, well, I've been wanting to do this, let's do this. I've been wanting to do this, let's do this. As I mentioned, it's addictive. So this is from, since November, but you can see these are the number of GitHub projects that I've created. So typically one a week, if not, maybe one every other week. And you can see my GitHub contributions. I used to see people on Twitter, developers and software engineers post this, and I had no idea what it was, but it's how often you're pushing code to GitHub. So you can see all these months leading up to it where I was completely terrified of GitHub. And you can see how that relationship has changed. And I was actually a little bit surprised by this number, 15, over 1,500 contributions. So essentially over 1,500 code pushes across these various projects since late November. So yeah, I might have a little bit of a problem. And again, I do caution anybody to it can legitimately be addictive because you can build anything that you can think of. And that's exactly what I've done here. I've had projects that I've been wanting to get off the plate or do something with for a while, a job board for students or various different things. And most of these were created in a matter of maybe 2 or 3 days, and they're now operational and students are using them, or my wife and I are using them, or faculty are using them. This was meant to sum it all up. Ultimately, I think that this diagram might cause more confusion than anything. So I did want to, and it looks like we will have time. I did want to just walk through a really quick example, not exactly a live example, because didn't want to leave that much up to chance if maybe there was a Claude outage today or if things were going slow. So I put this together last night in a matter of maybe about 10 minutes. Actually, when I realized that I had told Casandra that I was going to be doing a little bit of a demo. So just to show you real quick, because I know I went through that pretty quickly. So first things first is the GitHub account. That's real straightforward. You can just create that. If you have a Google account, you can just automatically create that, but you can have a free GitHub account, and there's an educator platform as well if you want to link that to your educator email. But you would just pop in, create a new repository, name it whatever you want, give it whatever description you want, and then create that repository. I'm not going to do that right now because we just jump into the one that we created for today. Okay, so I create I log into GitHub or create my GitHub account. I create the project. Don't have to have anything in it yet, but there is some stuff in here because I had this pushed last night. And then I'm going to go over to Claude to do my planning, right? So this was the planning that I did last night. I uploaded, let me go back real quick to that. Close some of these since we don't need to. Okay. So you saw me just add this GitHub. All it had access to was the quick start guide that I provided to Casandra that she is going to send out to everybody, make available to everybody at the end of this. So I uploaded that as the project knowledge, and I started the conversation with Claude. I said, hey, we're going to create a Claude Code prompt to create a interactive single page HTML guide based on the quick start guide that I just showed you and that you will all receive. This is me telling it to go through that protocol of asking me any questions and telling me its presumed answers. We won't go through each of these just for time's sake to try to have some time for questions here. But again, if you're viewing at any, or if you're looking at any of these or just glancing, you can see it raises some really good questions, some things that I might not have necessarily thought of. I agreed with most things. I explained to it that it was going to be in the GitHub repo. For 7, it asked if it wanted to just stick to the content I provided, or if it should pull anything else in. And it said, if you don't say anything, I'm just going to stick to what you provided. And I said, you know what, actually, I'm not an expert here. I'm relatively new to this. Let's go ahead and, pull in any best practices that you can find on the internet real quick, but without going too overboard or getting too technical here. So agree on all of that. Claude created this prompt, and I am going to just copy it. I'm of course going to review it and make sure that I agree with it. I'm going to copy that. I am going to come over to Claude Code that I have open. Again, it's set up for local right now. I'm going to click that drop down. I'm going to click Claude Cloud. And it's going to do that. And it's already on demo day there. But if I wanted to change that, I can select any of my other projects that might be in there. I'm going to paste that prompt in there. And that's it. I'm going to click send. And again, about 5 to 10 minutes. I believe this one was about 5. And I can actually show you the results from yesterday. So again, there's me providing the prompt. At this point, we've done all the planning and all the discussing with Claude, so no need to go back and forth here. Claude Code can just go to work. It's going to create that. It's going to provide me a link that I can merge that with my GitHub. So again, there's maybe a 1 or 2 click process there, but really straightforward and something that Claude can walk you through. So it created this index.html file, and now I have this nice little interactive guide, which I can also provide to Casandra and everybody. So this goes through what you need. This probably didn't have to be in here. I will say this is it doesn't have to be Claude. ChatGPT and Gemini both have their own versions of coding tools, so you could certainly do this. My personal favorite is Claude, and I created this with Claude, and Claude is never really shy about recommending itself over other models. So just a little checklist. You don't have to do it, but let's verify and let's get started. And it's just going to break down that quick step guide into steps. You can see the pro tips that it pulled in here are the things, and not perfect. Probably should have gone through this a little bit more carefully here, but again, for 5 minutes, this isn't something, whether if I was creating something for students, it's not like I would just provide them the link and not take a look at it. There might be some back and forth. Hey, Claude, you missed this, or hey, can we touch this up? But from, again, somebody who is a non-coder, I consider myself a bit of a technical person, but definitely not a coder. No coding involved here. And it's honestly amazing what Claude Code can make possible for you. So I'll stop there and try to open up some time for questions.
Thanks so much, Kyle. This is lightning speed. I know, like my brain is expanding. And I know that folks here are at all kinds of levels. So some are just getting started with custom bots. So like, whoa. And even for those that are more advanced, this is also like really, of course, cutting edge what you're doing. And I will maybe back up and say again, if you want to learn more about the PALS, because we had several questions about that, check out the video from September. What Kyle is doing and why his work was recommended to me back a few months ago is because he's using many bots scaffolded into assignments. So that already is something that many of us are not used to. So check that out. And yes, we're going to try to zero in on questions more specifically related to the project and the updates that you showed for us today. So we can take them first. I try to collect as many as I could, but if someone wants to ask on the microphone, that'd be great. Kyle, do you want to keep sharing the screen or
Oh yeah, did I stop that?
whatever?
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh yeah, because I was trying to see the question, but yeah, go ahead. And I can
Yes.
bring
How
it back
about
up.
Mark's question? Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Cassandra, and thanks, Kyle. That was a really fun kind of tour. I asked this question in the chat, but I'll ask it again here. I think this is fascinating. I never would have thought to use Claude Code to update the individual custom bots, but I'm wondering about a foundational question, like why at this point you're setting up the pedagogy as so many distinct different bots. That it seems to me like one way to put it is like a 2026 fix to a 2024 setup and pipeline, because it seemed like right away you're asking one bot to produce text, and then the student has to copy that and save it, put it into the next one. And to me, there's all kinds of challenges pedagogically with using like either custom GPTs or gems, or whatever, because they have no memory and persistent states and things like that. So is this all because these are free technologies that these companies are offering and you have to pay no API costs? Because otherwise it seems like if you're going to use Claude Code, then just use it to create an application which seamlessly integrates all these different steps and then could do things like use logging and all these things in the cloud where things can be persistent, and then you can actually test whether learning has helped. So I'm wondering if you're
Yep.
just trying to force this onto like a previous stage of evolution.
So yeah, no, you make great points, great questions. And this is definitely, so this has been evolving. This was Cassandra mentioned the TLT grant. So this started in 2024. This was when I was really into my chatbot era, or my chatbot phase, right? You know, ultimately, yes, to your point, this was the easiest way to do it. API was still far too intimidating for me. So I knew how to create one using ChatGPT's chatbot builders, just did that. Thought about having it, for simplicity's sake, having it just as maybe a single a chatbot. Ultimately, that wasn't, with the current models where they were at, it got too messy too quick, and they were slow and way more likely to hallucinate. That's where I plan on taking, like, as you mentioned, over the summer. I plan on going the full API route with this. But there are some things that I will say that are, some things that are maybe moments of friction for students that are intentional. So one really good point is with that company profile. I could just have that all happen behind the scenes, right? Their company profile gets created, and then the next chatbot or the next assignment or whatever already pulls that data in and is aware of it. But the number of students who are extremely uncomfortable with file management is typically, in my intro to MIS course, maybe about 80%, if not higher. At the end, after doing this, after having to update their company profile, that's one thing that I didn't mention, but at the end of, each subsequent assignment, they have to update that company profile. It becomes that living document that grows with their company. That tends to be the biggest struggle point for students. So there are things where there are areas where I do want to make this more seamless. There are some areas where I still want it to be seem full, for lack of a better term, just for those kind of learning moments for the students. But yeah, I maybe anticipate being back here in a year or so, and
Yes,
kind of
please.
showing the new version.
And Kyle, if I may say, like inspiring story for everybody. You've been teaching this to yourself, right? Pretty much. This is not you don't come from like heavy coding like you said today, right? This is something
Right.
you've
No,
been figuring
100%.
out.
I mean, and largely, benefit from A, groups like this, B, scouring the internet, just for, hey, somebody tried it to do this thing. Maybe that's not exactly what I need to use it for, but maybe I could try this instead. And hopefully, I'm kind of spurring some of that here as well. I do want to emphasize, no one right way to use Claude Code or to do this. This is just kind of the workflow pattern that I fell into here. And one other thing that I did want to mention was that, if Claude Code does still seem a little bit intimidating, a lot of stuff that you can do with Claude Code, you can now do with Claude Cowork, which is available through the same platform with the same pro account configuration.
So Kyle, I had another question from someone just getting started, specifically about GitHub. Someone who's really new to it and just wants to know if there's like a short answer to it. How come you had to use GitHub for what you were doing?
Maybe I probably didn't have to. I could have also used a Google Drive and given Claude Code and Claude both access to that. This was me kind of doing a little bit of research, seeing what, when I see people on Twitter and actual software engineers doing stuff, they're talking about GitHub and everything. So that was kind of my first lead.
Okay.
And again, I wasn't sure either. So I said, hey, Claude, what do I need to do here? How do I get GitHub set up? And provided the screenshots. Here's the screen that I'm seeing in GitHub. What do I need to do? And had it walk me through those things.
Mhm. We also had a question, might have been answered, but someone wanted to know if you had to change the platform you were using when you were making the changes that you mentioned you made on ChatGPT, but then they noticed Vercel app in the URL.
Uh, so the changes that I mentioned, like for the like the custom instructions and that, there was still a little bit of a manual part there, where after Claude Code spit out the updated documentation guide and custom instructions, I had to go back into ChatGPT and copy and paste the custom instructions for each of the chatbot. Again, something that I didn't remember his name, but that gentleman that asked, that will be something that I'll be able to do behind the scenes and have those custom instructions just live on the GitHub, so that anytime I need to make changes, Claude Code can make those changes and automatically push them, and I don't have to do any moving around of files.
Okay. And have you been able to do it with the Claude $20 a month plan, or because I know there's a lot of token limits that people mention?
Yeah, so I have we're on a Teams account, and you can get a max seat on a Teams account for 100. I did when I started out, this was on the $20 plan, so I think it's doable on 20, but it was, maybe if you have like one project going on, if you can't help yourself and then you end up spinning a dozen other projects up, then maybe you might want to. But 20 should be enough to get your toes wet, and you do have access to the various tools that you need from that now.
Okay. Would anyone else like to ask a live question? Yeah, big thank you. Before we go, I know we're almost out of time, and there are many that we didn't get to. I added them, Kyle, to the notes. Not the ones in the Q&A, but I'll do that too, in case you
Okay.
have any time to address them. And okay, Mark, do you want to do a quick follow-up?
Is there time for a quick follow-up here?
Um, I think so. Yeah, I
If people
can.
have to
I'm
leave, I
good.
guess
Yeah.
they could leave. But just, Kyle, I wasn't sure I fully understood your answer to my question, because I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're going to become a builder, right, and developer, which I think we all need to be going forward, the way you're showing us, right, then why still kind of hold on to this 2024 workflow? Is it because these are free and usually part of like enterprise agreements with the universities where they protect student data privacy? Because at the University of Minnesota, that's what they're telling us is, right, use GEMS because there's an agreement with Google. But I think GEMS or custom GPTs or whatever version of this you use are going to have serious pedagogical constraints. Like you said earlier, I'll put in an instruction to say don't answer questions, but these are not designed for pedagogy. These are answering machines. These are kind of wrappers around these. So I feel like why not just go whole hog into this future where you're going to design your own applications yourself if you're going to be a builder?
Yeah, no, I will. And so the actual in less than a week, and on Friday actually, I'm actually presenting my roundup of the project that I started in 2024. Started in 2024, for the, like you said, uh, protections. So wanted to have students have premium access to AI, because students that are using free ChatGPT versus paid ChatGPT are not getting the same learning experience. So that was kind of one crusade that I took up, and then putting them all on the same ChatGPT Teams account offered some of the privacy and security assurances that were rightfully on the forefront of a lot of people's mind at the time. So yeah, so it's been a challenge too, because this project has morphed so far beyond what the initial grant proposal was, and I have to kind of still keep some of it intact here before I can completely blow it up and yeah, do more of the take full control of it, essentially. Was that better?
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Kyle, you are invited to come again. You kind of hinted at it, so I'm going to take you up on that, and we want to hear what you're up to in a couple months or a year, which who knows? We can't even imagine. And thank you all for the questions. And
And I will do my best to answer. It might not be today, but I want to answer all the questions that Cassandra puts in there. So
thank you so much. And take care, everyone. Keep building, keep exploring, and hope to see you soon. Bye.
bye.